Hi, it's Tommy. Before we get started, I just want to let you know this episode is brought to you by Pod Hero, the easiest way to support your favorite podcast. Did you know that only 1% of the biggest podcasts make money? It's true. The other 99%, wink wink, like this one, rely on support from listeners like you. With Pod Hero, you can support all of your favorite podcasts with one monthly membership fee of only $4.99. Just click on the link in the show notes. Tell Pod Hero your favorite podcast. Please don't forget this one, Blending the Family. And your contribution gets shared between shows at the end of the month. I want to say I am enjoying being part of Pod Hero's network. Pod Hero works with almost all podcasts. There's a 0% platform fee. They don't take a cut. There are no contracts. And guess what? You can try it for free for 30 days. Pod Hero. Tell them Blending the Family sent you. Welcome to another edition of the podcast known as Blending the Family. I am your host, Tommy Maloney. Thanks for coming by. This is episode 160. That's 160. Is this your first time coming by? What is Blending the Family all about? Thanks for asking. I'm going to tell you. Blending the Family is from divorce, boo, to dating, yay, maybe to the big day, marriage, yeah, all right. So that's what Blending the Family is all about. Other times we talk about what's a good wine on the first date, finding your faith, what's a good app for you to work with before your divorce or going through a divorce or co-parenting. So a lot of stuff on this podcast. Erika Englund is our guest on episode 160 here. Who is Erika Englund? I'm not going to tell you just yet, other than think about this. I want you to ponder this. I want you to just absorb this question. Would you hire an attorney who never won a case? Would you hire an attorney who never won a case? So I'm going to let you stew on that. I'm going to let you just, think about it. How are you doing? You doing good? Thanks for coming by. Bad news? Still have the bad chair. Still have the chair. Well, had to pay some extra bills. We needed our trees trimmed badly. And it helps with wiffle ball. Yeah. There's still people out there to play wiffle ball. My son Connor and I, we do that in the front yard, and because of the branches hanging low, try and hit a home run, which I do a lot. No, really. I do occasionally. Anyway, I got the trees trimmed. They look great. Can't wait to see the boy and play a game of wiffle ball and see what happens there. Also, hockey season allegedly is going to happen, and because of having to pay for hockey, I had to say, no chair right now. No chair. So, but that's okay. Well worth it. Also, our new fur baby. You might have seen Otis, on Instagram. And actually, I posted, I wrote an article or a LinkedIn post. You can find me at the Tommy Maloney on LinkedIn. I did a post about training your dog is like having a business. So you'll see pictures of Otis there on the Instagram, Blending Family. You'll see Odie on there with the hashtag #OurDogOtis Colorado. And there you go. Erika Anne is the guest on this podcast, and I'm so excited to share this episode with you. So who is Erika Anne? Thanks for asking. And I'm super excited to say that, yep, she's an attorney that never won a case. Can you believe that? I can't believe that. Anyway, so let me just pull up Oh, what the heck happened here? I pulled up her bio. Come on. I just had it. There we go. Erika Anne Englund. She's an attorney, mediator, law professor, and legal tech founder. She's now practicing exclusively out of court. She has mediated over 5,000 hours of successful divorce resolutions. As a single parent of 2 children, Erika experiences the joys and challenges of divorce, like on a daily basis, happily co-parenting with her former husband. Well, she says most of the time. And like a lot of us former spouses, she even wrote in her bio, she's not perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. Anyway, she says, I left court because I never won a case. And again, we're going to talk about that. So, anyway, that's Erika. I had a blast with Erika. A few things we're going to talk about. Oh, hi, wife. You want to say hi to the people on the podcast?
Hi, everybody.
There you go.
Looking for the dog.
Oh, Otis is not here. He's with Becca
Okay.
at Travis's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else?
I'm going to go start dinner.
Oh, what's for dinner?
Shakshuka.
Oh, you're going to do the, how do you say it?
Shakshuka,
Shakshuka.
I think. Or shukshaka, something like that.
Is it like Shake Shack?
No, but that sounds really good right now, too.
Love Shack?
No.
Oh, you don't like Love Shack, but you like Shake Shack?
I'm hungry.
Are you hangry?
I'm getting there.
You better go cook then.
Mm-hmm.
Love you. Mean it. All right. Where was I? I was rudely interrupted. Here's what we talked about. One of the things we talked about was she is celebrating 16 years of what she calls family anniversary, familyversary, which is actually the day her and her ex-husband got married, and then the family gets together. I know, interesting, very cool. I don't know. In my view, the jury's still out. Advice tips for you on how to co-parent. She talks about how during the pandemic, how her and her husband were able to really co-parent in a good way. We do mention one of our favorite guests, Gabrielle Hartley. Gabrielle, we love her. And I do mention, and I know this is a broken record, but I do mention this again and again and again. Why is family court such a scam? Why is it such a cluster? Anyway, so Erika Anne Englund, you're shutting the door. Okay, apparently I was too loud. Erika Anne Englund on this episode of the podcast. Hey, before we end this conversation with you and I, please subscribe. Please leave a rating and review. Share this podcast. Let others know about it. And support other podcasts as well. So there you go. All right. If this is your first time listening, thank you. And we have this saying towards the end of this podcast, which is what Terry Crews, I heard in an interview a couple years ago. And what Terry Crews says, your success is my success. And this is true, especially when it comes to family. If your family's successful, you are successful, regardless if you are a bonus parent or a blood parent. So there you go. Erika Anne, episode 160. Thanks for listening. I hope you have an enjoyable rest of your day. Apparently I'm having shashuka, and I will let you know how that tasted on the next episode. There you go. Which will be episode 161. And I already know who our guest is. A returning guest will be on episode 161. And I will tell you, it's right before Father's Day. So happy Father's Day now when this comes out. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye. All right, Erika. In honor of two of my favorite entrepreneurs, Bert and John Jacobs, the creators of Life is Good. I'm going to steal something from them or borrow. You know, we'll say borrow. Tell me something, Erika. Tell me something good that happened to you today.
Goodness, something good that happened to me today. All right, this is little. This is a tiny little thing, but I incorporated my business 2 years ago, and I rebranded, put so much thought and work into the rebranding of what the business would look like. And I had an old mug that my old assistant, who previously worked for me, had made with my old logo. And I loved it so much that I used it until it was chipped and it was broken and shattered. And this morning when I woke up, outside my door was, if you could see me, you could see it. She had made me a brand new mug with the new logo. And it just makes me feel like my practice is now complete. My little brand new logo mug came out of nowhere. It was totally an unexpected gift and a lovely way to start the day.
That's awesome. You know, are you a coffee drinker?
Yes.
So perfect. Because I know as a fellow coffee drinker, there's a couple of mugs that you just have to start your day off when you're pouring that cup of joe.
You get it. And so when you have a sentimental mug, you do not want to let go of it no matter what. But finally, I can retire that other mug, and the new one's moving in today, and we're all going to be a happy family.
One big happy mug family.
Exactly.
Ooh, that's a good. I liked starting. I needed something good today. Really did. So let's just start off with, I loved, thank you for the information for your bio. I felt like a stand-up comedian sent me that information, and a lot of the little things that you sent me, which will be incorporated into the show notes, made me laugh. And one of the things that really stood out, Erika, was never won a case.
The attorney who never won a case.
Exactly.
I speak about that and introduce myself that way to people and ask them if they think that they would hire an attorney who never won a case. And I love to see their reactions of disgust and pity as they look at me and think, no, I wouldn't hire an attorney who never won a case. But obviously there's a story there, and it's where it brought me to where I am in my life today.
Keep going. I'm intrigued. I think the listeners might be intrigued of a lawyer who never won a case.
It started for me, the very first case I actually lost was at 1:30 in the afternoon, the day I got sworn in as an attorney. So I got sworn in by the judges, and my boss said, go to court at 1:30 in the afternoon. I had been an attorney for about 2 hours and 15 minutes and got sent in. I think it was a support modification. I don't remember. And, I lost. And that was sort of to be expected. Judge ruled in the other person's favor. And then as I began to be more comfortable in court, I noticed that very often we would go present our arguments and I would lose. But more often than I would lose, we would settle cases. So you show up in court with your client, the other attorney shows up with their client, and you're all in the hallway trying to cobble together a deal in the 6 minutes you have before the judge calls your case. And what tends to happen is that attorneys really create a lot of pressure to make their clients settle. And the way that they tell their clients to settle is, well, the other person's really unhappy with this settlement. And I know you don't like the settlement, but a good settlement is when both people are equally unhappy with it. And that horrifies me. At least when there's a winner and a loser, you have a winner, but a settlement is known as two losers, and any family lawyer will tell you that. So every time I lost, I lost. Every time I settled, I felt like I lost because the client had an outcome they didn't want. But there were times that I won. There was a domestic violence case I had that was terrible, a property division case I had that was atrocious and complex. But these were so emotional and so expensive. And by the end of the process, I saw that my client, technically, the judge had ruled in their favor. But when looking at how much it cost, how long it took, and just the level of destruction that it caused in their lives, I felt like I couldn't really say that's a win. So when I was losing, I was losing. When I was settling, I was losing. And when I was winning, I was losing. And that was really the first time that I thought about getting out of family law entirely. But it was what I did. It was all that I knew. I thought that I could be a person who made a difference in a difficult system. And it was a tough period in my life to know that I was walking into court every single day to lose. And but I didn't know what else, where to go next.
How long did you stay? And I never understood this in the world of your former law profession and medical. How long did you practice? I don't get it. Why are we practicing? You should have been, on the A team. Why do you keep practicing? Anyway, how long did you stay in family law then?
I stayed in family law litigation, like litigating in the courtroom, until early 2011. So it was about 5 years that I litigated. And during that time, I started transitioning into mediation. But then in March of 2010, so 4.5 years, I went to Mexico with my now former husband, and we had this lovely villa, and we were whale watching, and we were eating nachos, and we were going on like little nature walks, and I was just sobbing the whole time in Mexico, like eating nachos and crying and watching whales and crying.
That sounds like a great date.
It was good for both of us. We got home and my former husband said, you have to change your life. And that was in March of 2010. So pretty soon thereafter, I shut down my litigation practice and started a brand new mediation practice. And I haven't been in court since then. So still acting as an attorney, but only working as a mediator. And all I do is win, to quote DJ Khaled. All I do is win.
Or what's his name from 2.5 Men?
Charlie Sheen. It's
Charlie Sheen. Winning. Winning. Yeah, there you go. I like DJ Khaled better though. So.
Well, I'll take all the winning you can give me.
Every day. Well, it was funny because when you were talking about going into a court, and even though you settled and that was a loss, the first thing I thought of was Stephen Covey's 7 Habits, and he talks about that will be a lose-lose situation. So you have no winners. It's just a lose-lose situation.
It absolutely is. In fact, I've read the 7 Habits and I work within many of the structures of that book in my practice now. Mediation itself is talking about people's interests. So what do you want to see happen? What are you afraid of? What are you concerned about? What's your best outcome? And court is about positions. I want $1,800 versus I'm going to pay $600. And so whenever we're setting positions against each other, it looks like a zero-sum game. It looks like a lose-lose. The amazing thing about mediation is we just step out of that and we say, what are all of the things that both of you want? And then let's create an alternative that's serving each person's interests. It's a really magical way to get people from digging in and staring at each other to stepping back and looking at the bigger picture.
Why is family court such a, I'm trying to think of I don't have a positive word for it because going through my own trials and tribulations of family court, but why is family court such a, the only word that comes to me is scam.
That's a word that very many people use. And this is my opinion. I'm a disruptor. I have created an entire process outside of the court system. So there are quite a few people in the court system in my area that don't like me at all, which between you and I and the listeners, I consider a wonderful compliment. But in my own opinion, I think it's two things. It's first that it's very hard to measure the concepts between family at the same standard that we measure guilty versus innocent, for example. So if you're in a car accident, we need to know, were you guilty or were you innocent? But if you're a parent, how do we evaluate parent A is good and parent B is bad?
Right.
The concept itself is just ill-suited to an adversarial environment. And then what happens is that attorneys are ethically obligated to pursue every action that they must take in furtherance of the client's rights. At the same time, they are financially motivated to take every single action they can take in furtherance of the client's rights. And what happens often is that we see attorneys utilizing this ethical obligation, quote unquote, to do a lot of unnecessary work and stir up crazy amounts of conflict so that they're able to generate more income from a divorce. And when our clients get in and they sit on either side with their attorney, and their attorney says, I'm going to get you X and I'm going to get you Y, and you don't have to worry about this. As people, we hear that outcome, we invest in that outcome, and then it's very hard to give up partway through. So I think the system sucks people in by giving them some power, some voice, and then they have an attorney telling them, and we're going to get you what you want to get. But what clients don't know is that that's one client to that attorney. That attorney has thousands of other clients, and the attorney is going to want to protect their relationship with the other attorneys, with the judges, with the experts. So there's all kinds of levels of, I don't want to say side deals here, but there are layers and layers that attorneys work through that sometimes their client is really not their first priority, or even their second, or even their third.
Well, and you bring up a great point about priorities, and this is my view, and my view only comes from my personal experience. My personal experience was when my former spouse took me to court because, according to her, our son vocally said to her, I want to move to Wisconsin, to out of state. And I don't believe that for a fact. My thinking is that her attorney, and again, I'm thinking, especially in the law practice, there needs to be, I don't know, maybe some rules about ethics. I don't know. I'm not an attorney, nor do I play one on the podcast. But my thought process would be her attorney saying, you know, he's a good dad. This is not a good case. I don't feel that this is something I want to take on. But unfortunately, they're not going to say that.
Well, that's not the way that they make any money, by saying
exactly.
Yeah. And we also are indoctrinated with a concept beginning in law school that our job as an attorney is to fight for the client and to tell the client's story. So when you get into the family court system, you see attorneys that are making outrageous, ridiculous claims. And you know that the attorney themselves knows that that is a ridiculous claim. But we are taught to believe as attorneys that it's not our job to evaluate whether our client has a reasonable case. It is our job to fight as hard as we possibly can for what outcome that client is looking for. And this is incredibly difficult to integrate into family law, where we're talking about homes and children and moving. And it can be very sad as an attorney to see when one has to fight for a case that they don't support. It happened to me as a baby lawyer when I was working for other people. And they said, here, take this case. And I was like, oh, have you looked at this case? There's so many reasons why. But they just said, no, take the case and tell the client's story. This concept of having a personal responsibility to help people get the right outcomes is non-existent in the family law attorney world. It's the attorney responsibility to help you get the outcome that you're willing to pay for. So, I mean, in many senses, it is a scam.
Yeah, as I'm going back to that not just that horrific. Well, I shouldn't say horrific. I mean, very blessed that the judge ruled in our favor that he was not going to allow my former spouse to take our son out of state. But getting to that process cost, I maxed out a credit card, had to borrow money from my now wife, had to borrow money from a family member. And it's just insane. And it's money you'll never, I mean, part of me is, well, that's money I'm never going to get back. But at the same time, if I hadn't spent the money, then I'm sure, unfortunately, my son would be in the land of cheese right now.
Exactly. And, it's really unfortunate that you got the outcome that you wanted. But even today, even though that was years ago, you look back on that and you see the pain and the stress that it caused and how much money it took away from your support of your family and your dreams for your financial future. And that's why, if I were your attorney, I would have said, I didn't win. Cases like your case are the reason why I got out of family court. It wasn't that I hated dealing with awful, mean, terrible people. It was that I hated seeing good people just get destroyed.
Well, it's funny because the other night I was watching one of my favorite movies, and it makes me cry, Mrs. Doubtfire, because I felt like Robin Williams in the court scene when he's trying to fight for justice and having equal visitations. And I really found it interesting that even in the movie came out back in 1993. I'll never forget the judge said in the movie, yes, it's a movie, I get it. I know people are probably rolling their eyes at me right now, but Tommy, it's a movie. I know it's a movie. But he did say that back then, how important it was to have the father in the lives of the children, because majority of the time the cases always were won by the mom, because
Sure.
that's moms are nurturing, dads aren't. And it was just a lovely piece in the movie to show that how important it is that co-parenting means, in my view, you have both parents involved, not just it being co-parents as one-sided. The dad pays their child support and doesn't see the kids. It's they're part of their lives, and how important that is. And again, I just found it interesting watching that movie and seeing the importance of that particular scene, just to show that we need more in real life, more family court judges to recognize that.
How far do you think we've come since 1983?
That's a great question, because I still talk to a lot of my guy friends, my dad friends, who still feel that it's not equal. It's still not equal. We haven't come far enough in family court when it comes to judges recognizing the importance of dads being in their children's lives. I don't think we've come far enough, quite honestly.
That's sad to hear when we think about a movie that you said came out in 1983. The,
93,
um, oh,
1993.
93. So but the level of progress that you would have imagined that we'd have made by 2020 is just still not there.
And quite honestly, Erika, I I feel that if the judge in my situation was a female, I really don't think the ruling would have been in my favor.
That's interesting. Have you heard that same experience from other dads, friends that you have?
Yes, yes, yes.
Interesting. There are some counties up here where there are only female judges on the bench. So I'm interested to talk to those attorneys and see what they know about that. Like, I
Yeah.
wonder if there's some implicit bias that even the most neutral judge doesn't know that they're exercising if she's a mother and she's saying, okay, I have a hard time separating a mother from her child. It's easier to separate a father from their child.
What what advice and tips can you offer the listeners for better co-parenting in your experience?
Oh gosh, I have so many. How many hours do we have? um,
I'm here. I have a bottle of wine chilling, so at one point we'll have to take a break so I can open it up. But other than that,
Beautiful.
yeah.
Perfect. I'll do the same. Um, so, I mean, very first, I think that the very first thing is to be able to get right with yourself about the split. As long as we are carrying guilt or shame or anger about the split, then we're going to be projecting those feelings onto our former spouse. And it's basically impossible to have a partnership when you are carrying around those extreme feelings that come along with divorce. The worst are the people who get divorced and they think that they don't really have any feelings about it. Like, actually, no, I'm doing fine. I'm ready to move on with my life. And you're thinking, wow, this is all going to implode. But whether it's therapy, whether it's reading a book like Gabrielle Hartley's book, Better Apart, is so good that I've been giving it free to some of my clients. I'm like, you need this so much. I'm giving you each a copy. But a book like that or an online course, there are much more affordable options than getting into a big, long therapeutic relationship. But just doing something to become right with oneself and finding perspective on what happened. And then we're less reactionary, to bring us back to Stephen Covey. And we're able to be much more proactive once we've settled down that emotional component. That's maybe the hardest thing to do. And I'm suggesting to your listeners that they do that first. But almost like building the foundation of the house, if you get that right, then your chances of having a structure that is solid, that keeps everybody safe and comfortable, are so much higher.
I'll never forget a friend of mine when I was going through my divorce. He gave me some great words of wisdom, and you're talking about, the house and the foundation. He said, when you are going out picking furniture for yourself and your son, make sure he's involved in that decision. I'm like, I never thought of that. I thought that was brilliant. And sure enough, I kind of guided him towards which bedroom furniture, but I mean, we still, I don't know. I think he's outgrown it. I think I need to get him a new bed, but he's 17. He'll be out of the house, college next year. So why waste the money now? But I thought that was a great tip that I heard was
Yeah.
having the kids involved.
That's actually one of the things that's included on my list of how to talk with young children about divorce. I have an age by age, step by step list that's broken down developmentally. Would you like a copy of it for your readers?
Yeah, that'd be great. I can add to the show notes.
And one of those tips is to absolutely include the children in the building and the creating of their new space, because it helps them feel like they've got some ownership in that space. And it's fun for children to get new things. So whether your family budget is you're going to the Goodwill and picking out some things, or you're going to Pottery Barn, it's about the child creating their own space for themselves. Also, I should note, maybe you don't have a room for your child. Maybe you share a bedroom with your child because you're in a little space. It's still getting your little guy a set of dressers, a bucket of toys, their own little bed, and letting them create their space in there. That's what they're going to remember about it. They're not going to remember, how big or fancy or important a house was. It's how comfortable they feel there. So your friend, that's a great tip, and it's one of mine. So obviously, I think it's fantastic.
What
Oh yeah.
what does the research say about kids under 10 and the impact of conflict?
Without being able to specifically break it to kids under 10, because the research I've seen goes a bit higher. This is interesting that you bring this up, because we often think that it's the divorce that quote unquote ruins a child, but it is not the divorce itself. The conflict is usually a big part of it. And children that are in high conflict homes and then are living in low conflict homes post divorce, actually, our research shows they do better after the divorce, because though they're dealing now with two different homes and make different financial circumstances, they're not living in conflict day to day. And we've all very recently been through this COVID scenario together, and we've all been living in a place where we don't know what's going to happen from day to day, and that is a very uncomfortable place to be. We know about conflict that children get incredibly physically and emotionally stressed when exposed to it. So the first thing parents need to think about when they say, oh, we're staying together for the children, is, well, what kind of home are you creating when you're there? Are you able to stay together in a low conflict manner? Because if you're not, then it could actually be safer for your children to be in separate homes. Older children, when I did a radio show, my partner on the radio show, his parents got divorced when he was 17. And he said he had been waiting for years. And when it finally happened, he was so relieved, because he knew he wasn't coming home every day to this explosive, dramatic anger. So conflict is my wheelhouse. It's my baby. And what I like people to recognize about conflict in co-parenting and in divorce is that, yeah, it's awful for children. And it doesn't matter whether you're married or whether you're separated or whether you're co-parenting. The conflict itself is incredibly difficult for kids. But the wonderful thing about that is it's totally manageable. Even if you have no control over your spouse, there are wonderful resources that can help a person manage their own conflict and really put out the fire on their side of the forest. So the good thing about conflict is it can be tamed.
I don't know if this will mean anything to you, but I'm always curious asking. I always like to ask experts about this and their thoughts and feelings. So your two children were very young when you and your former spouse divorced.
Yeah, 1 and 3. My baby was still breastfeeding.
My son and I, ironically, were about the same age when my parents divorced and when his mom and I divorced. It was about 5 years old.
And so how do you think that impacted you for it to happen at that age specifically?
That's a great question. I don't have an answer other than I saw the only thing I can recollect from my parents' marriage was, the day it all came to an end when my dad left. And I took that memory, and when my former spouse asked for a divorce, and I didn't want my son to see me in that same way. I didn't want him to see me leave. And I don't, I really wish I could figure out if it was a coincidence or I really wish I had a better answer, Erika, but I just find it ironic that we were both around the same age when it happened. My question though is along the lines of conflict is, do you feel, or even with the research, that the younger the kids are, the more apt of okayness they are after the divorce versus uh, an older child going through it, or is it the other way around?
There are good and bad components of both. So on the one hand, my daughter, who's now 9, she remembers my former husband and I living together. And she was 3 when we split. And I always thought it would be so terribly sad for my youngest, Spence, he was 1, that he would never remember us living together. So I did delay the divorce because I wanted him to get to this point of understanding what our family felt like together in one house and having that memory. But then years later, asking my daughter, she really only remembers the times that her dad and I were fighting, because she was 3, and a 3-year-old is going to remember wonderful, amazing things and scary, traumatic things. And so these memories I thought I was giving her of all of us in one home, what she took out of it was the time she felt unsafe. My little guy, he doesn't remember us living together, but he doesn't remember that conflict. So he has so much less of an anxious personality than she does. And I do think those things are somewhat related. With these younger guys, if they're not going to remember the good times of the parents living together, the good thing is they're also not going to remember the bad times. And the bad times can be really traumatic for a younger child. With the older children, though, I think that developmentally, because they very often blame themselves for divorce, there's the potential for a lot of problems if the parents are not able to go to the child and directly and specifically say, you did not cause this. This is not your fault. And you don't have a responsibility to fix this for mom or for dad. It's our responsibility to keep us safe and to keep you safe. And you're going to be okay. It's so rare for parents to have that short conversation. Children that are a bit older and to blame themselves. And they will, we know, research knows, carry that guilt and that shame and that toxicity through the rest of their lives. Older children, we know, can either use the parents to triangulate each other. They know the parents are fighting, so they're going to use that conflict to their benefit so that they can go out and smoke pot behind the ceramics building. Like, not like that's a thing I ever did in high school. There's no way. But just like as a side example, these children triangulate their parents to try to get their own way when they're a bit older. So, or the divorce happening at that time is difficult too. I think there's 2 good times to get divorced. And one of those is when you look at what's happening now and you look at what your future would be like without your spouse, and you know that it would be happier and healthier without your spouse. That's when you say, I have to get divorced. The other good time to get divorced is when your spouse says they want to get divorced, because you don't have a choice. So if your spouse says you have to do it, then that's the other time where you have to realize, okay, I have to get suited up and get ready to move into this. But there's no perfect age is the bottom line here. And
okay,
there are certainly, for families that want to stay together for the children, I would say look at the level of conflict and what life are you children actually living? What are they learning about what a marriage is? How safe do they feel? And if they feel safe and they're learning good things, then there may be no reason to divorce right away. But often children are much more perspective, or they see much more, I should say, than parents give them credit for.
Oh my gosh, I'm reliving a lot of good memories. Good thing that bottle of wine is not that far. When you said about let me put it to you this way: when I was going through my divorce, I was on a phone with one of my dearest, bestest friends, uh, my buddy Chris. And Chris had gone through a divorce. And he said, if you take your son out of the equation, would you want to stay married to that person? And immediately I'm like, no. He goes, there's your answer. Work on your relationship with your son, work on building, a foundation of staying connected with him. That's what was important. And when you were sitting here telling me that, the two different ways, I'm going, oh my gosh, it seems like common sense, but it's not common sense.
Oh, and it's so emotional.
Yes.
It's quite difficult in the middle of the storm to stop and say, is this a good time to get out of the storm? Or is this a storm that I'll be able to ride out? And it's lightning and thunder and hail and rain all around you, and you can't see much. So it's, when we look back on it, we may say, oh, maybe I should have done that years ago, or that was really clear. But I certainly have a lot of empathy for people that live in the middle of that storm and they don't know what direction to go. It's so hard to see.
This might sound like an odd question, but when I was going through some research and wanted to come up with some questions, I was at, many years ago, I was at the local chapter of the National Speakers Association here in Colorado. And I was talking with a lady, and she was asking me what, my niche is. And I said, well, I'm still working on that. Trying to figure out, at the time I was divorced. I was a single dad. And I'd said to her, I mentioned my ex-wife, and she looked at me, and I think she was from London. And she found that amusing because she said that's not a terminology they use. They don't say ex-wife or ex-spouse. They simply just say our former spouse, and then I just cut it out and just say my former. What do you currently call your former husband? Is it your ex-husband? Is it your former? Is it Bob? I don't know.
I love to know this about you because I picked it up when I was looking at your TED Talk and through your research and the things you're doing about promotion of positive fatherhood, that you refer to your former wife in a respectful way. And I actually use the term former. I wrote an article on LinkedIn. Anybody can check it out. It says, I don't have an ex-husband and neither should you. But it talks about the importance of the language we use during divorce and how that language shapes our experience and our children's experiences. My use of the word former came from a couple of years before we were divorced, listening to a story on National Public Radio where they were talking about the difference between ex-military and former military. And they described ex-military as being someone who was dishonorably discharged. Oh. Whereas former military is someone who was honorably discharged. And this is, for example, why we have a former president of the United States and not an ex-president. So this made me think, well, if they both mean discharge, then could we start using the word to indicate that they were honorably discharged? It's a softer word, and whether people do or don't know the linguistic connotation behind that, it sounds and feels more respectful. And I'm a strong believer in, even if you don't feel super respectful right now, start using the respectful language, and you'll notice it'll soften both of you up. So yeah, I refer to my former husband as my former husband, and he and I are not perfect. We have conflicts in our relationship.
No.
Yeah, I know.
A former family attorney would have conflicts, and hold on, I'm trying to do this with a straight face. Yeah, not going to happen.
I know. This year's been interesting because it's been the year that I realized that I was doing something that women tend to be the ones that do this traditionally, called gatekeeping, where I was the person who handled all of the little tasks and the uniforms and the shortcuts and the things that were booking the children to do, and school tuition, doctor appointments. And I started to get very resentful that my former husband didn't understand how difficult it was for me to get everything done. So I started giving him some tasks to do, like, this will teach him. Then he would go and get the haircuts, and they would come back. The children looked like serial killers, like they had horrible haircuts. And then I'm mad. Like, I sent you a picture, you couldn't even get the right haircut. And then I realized, the point of gatekeeping is control. So if you let your former husband take the children to the haircuts, but then you criticize how well he's done it, it's still you keeping control.
Hallelujah. Thank you.
And the nicest thing we can do for them and for us is to say, take them to the haircuts. And then when they come back, no matter what, yard implement it looks like was used to cut their hair, you just say, thank you. The haircuts look great. And then as the person who just lost control over a task, now instead it's just me gaining free time, and it's my former husband picking up more of those day-to-day responsibilities and just blooming under them. Like, as an example, he's a teacher, so during COVID, he did all the teaching for the children. I did none of it. I taught them things in the afternoon, like we put together a mock trial about whether Carol Baskin did or did not kill her husband and the tigers. Oh yeah, it was. I've seen attorneys that lacked the level of professionalism and gravitas that my 7 and 9-year-old did during this trial. But their dad did the schooling, and so it's something that really resonated with me about what you do with promoting positive fatherhood, is that when we allow men the opportunity to step in and we tell them, you're not going to be criticized, you're going to be doing it differently than we're doing it, but you take over these day-to-day tasks and you get more involved, that they get to build a deeper connection with the children, and it creates a lot of pride with themselves. And that's one of those things that I see as win-win. So this was an interesting thing that kind of has gone through in the last year and a half with my former and I. Didn't create a lot of conflict, but I learned a big lesson. Hopefully, if your listeners take anything from this, it's the control that was really creating the conflict for us in that scenario. And when I was able to let go of that control, I got free time. I didn't have to go to haircuts. Win, win, win.
Okay, Erika. You're celebrating a unique anniversary.
Today, yeah.
Is it today? I am because I don't want to say anything yet other than this is very unusual. Well, yes, it's unusual. I know we haven't met, but this is a freak situation, because you're going to get people to say, I can never do this with my former spouse.
Yeah.
Let's talk Familyversary, and happy Familyversary, by the way.
Thank you so much. We're going to have champagne and cupcakes later. And actually, my whole family is coming into town from various places tomorrow. So we're going to get together and have a whole entire extended Familyversary. But so one of the things that I think we see if we have friends that are divorced is that their anniversary is a day that's difficult. It's a day where they look back and remember the happy day, and then they come forward and they take this is a marriage that failed. So it's for some people an awkward day, and for some people it's a sad day or an angry day. And the very first time our anniversary rolled around, my former husband and I had just submitted the divorce paperwork. So it was very, very new. And I didn't know how I was going to feel about it, but I hadn't said anything to him It's a weird conversation to have. I guess you just think you no longer have an anniversary, so why talk about it? But on June 5th, on that day that we got married, my daughter, who was 3, out of nowhere came up to me and she said, "Mom, I was at your wedding." And I said, "You were?" And she said, "Yeah, I was there." And I said, "Oh, tell me what that was like for you." Because for your listeners, little tip, if you have no idea what to say to a child because they come up to you with something totally out of the blue, tell me what that was like for you is a good tip. It buys you some time.
I'm writing that down.
And she said it was outside and there were flowers and there was sunshine. And my former husband and I had gotten married in a tiny little vineyard in a tiny little town called Clarksburg in Northern California, wine country near the Delta River. And it was sunny and there were flowers and it was beautiful. So I took my wedding album out. I showed my daughter and we looked through it together. And she was telling me how she had seen in her dream all of these beautiful, lovely outdoor flowers.
Wow.
And I realized, as sad as an anniversary is when we're divorced, had we not been married, we would not have these 2 children. For us, the children came directly out of the marriage. So that was the day that typically we think our marriage began on that day. And I asked my former husband, could we instead look at this as the day that our family started? Because even though we don't have a marriage anymore, we have a family still. And really without that day, his family wouldn't be here. So let's have some cake and champagne and let's start celebrating this as our familyversary. And every year we get together. Usually we're in Tahoe, but not this year because of travel restrictions. But we get together and we get our wedding-like engagement glasses out, the real Mikasa crystal, and everybody gets to have champagne or bubbly apple juice and talk about how lovely our family is and how happy we are to be in part of this family. And we cheers and we eat cupcakes, and that's about it. It's a very small little ceremony in and of itself, but the big shift that it creates, if anyone's able to possibly imagine this in the future, is looking at that day as the beginning of something wonderful. And then every year that the anniversary comes around, it's not a negative drain on you. It's actually just a lovely little reminder of this is why you have your babies in your arms today. And your spouse may not want to celebrate Familyversary with you, but you can celebrate it on your own or with your children. It doesn't have to be all together. It's just one of those, to get back to Stephen Covey again, my gosh, this guy, it's a paradigm shift. And we're taking something that feels to us like a negative, and just in the way we're looking at it, it feels positive now. And everybody I've shared this story with, they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is great. We're doing a familyversary." Because who doesn't want an excuse to drink champagne and eat cupcakes? I mean, really.
Oh gosh, you had me at cupcakes.
So yes, we're doing that a little later today, and I'm excited every year for it. One of those things that I share with all my clients and anybody that I can is just try it out, pop a bottle.
Again, Erika, I could not. I mean, my former spouse and I are we can't even be in the same room still. The only way we communicate is through email. That's it. And the funny thing is, she'll talk to my wife to not necessarily go through my wife to get to me, but they'll have conversations. And I find that funny. I don't like my wife, her former husband and I, we'll talk. I mean, not much, but it's comfortable. I'm not still comfortable after 12 years. I think it's 12 years. I don't do math very well, Erika. I think it's 12 years.
Hey, you're talking to a lawyer. So.
Yeah, I know my rights. Oh, sorry, that was something different. After 12 years, again, we still cannot have a one-on-one conversation. And
do you blame yourself for that at any level?
Do I? No.
Perfect.
No, because I've tried, and my wife has seen me try.
Good.
On several occasions, but it's okay.
It's a beautiful way to manage conflict, to recognize the things that we can impact and that we cannot impact. So just to bring you back to what are some of the things that I recommend to people to help their co-parenting and lower their conflict, one of those things is you can stop trying. You are not under an obligation to try for the rest of your life if your former spouse is never going to help you make that work. Give it a good effort, but then stop. And if you feel like, shame or guilt or blame, or you could have kept trying, then keep trying or go to therapy. But for you, Tommy, to be at a place where you're peaceful with the fact that you have stopped trying, and I imagine that if she ever came to you and wanted to have a really constructive relationship with you, you'd be open to that. That's a healthy and a lovely place to be able to have drawn that line and created that boundary.
Tell me your thoughts on, because again, you've mentioned this, and I'm very blessed you have, that I try and keep a positive mindset when it comes to even the world of divorce. But what are your thoughts with the way you hear these two schools of thoughts because of COVID? Either you're going to see a lot of babies coming out in January, or we're going to see a lot of divorces because now people are literally quarantined together. People are spending more time together that they're not used to. What are your thoughts when it comes to the relationships, and do you feel that there will be possibly more divorces, or do you feel that maybe it's just the media being the media?
That's a couple questions. I'll break that down. So as far as babies, I saw an internet meme that said 9 months from now, there's going to be a lot of first children, which I thought was hilarious because if anyone has kids, that COVID is probably not a time where you and your spouse are engaging in a lot of sexy night times. And you have your children driving you crazy already. It's not a point where anyone's like, let's add more kids. If there is a baby boom in 9 months, I'm putting all my chips on those are going to be first babies. People divorcing, I think there are two different camps. There are the cooperative and the non-cooperative. Non-cooperative people that have been upset by what has gone on are going to be more upset by everything this pressure put on us with COVID. They're going to be looking for somebody to blame, and that someone's very often their current spouse. And they're going to imagine things are going to be better without you, so they're going to hire a lawyer and they're going to go to court. And I do believe there's going to be an uptick in divorces, not my clientele, but people who go to court. Those are people that they're just mad, they want out, and they want somebody to blame, and something's got to happen now. But I think my clientele, they tend to be cooperative and more collaborative, and they take more measured steps. They're looking at the fact that the economy is incredibly uncertain. One or both of them could lose their jobs. They've lost a lot of money in the stock market. Many of my clients, bonuses have been cut. Stock grants have been cut. So they are instead preferring to wait it out and not make a move right now until they feel like they're on more stable financial footing. I even asked my boyfriend, he got divorced almost exactly a year ago. And I said, if this year were that year, do you think you and your former wife would have split? And he said, there's no way. There's so much uncertainty. And we didn't hate each other, we lived together. So my theory is, if there's an upswing in divorces, it's going to be divorces that go to court. It's not going to be divorces for people that mediate. That won't happen until we're feeling a little more financially stable. And so I think it's mostly media driven. On the other hand, I have some wonderful married couples and partner couples that have told me that this has brought them closer together and that they've gone through this challenge and they've parented as a team and they've learned things about each other that have been really good for them. And I haven't seen that reported in the media where some people are saying, as a family unit or as a relationship unit, this has really strengthened us, because I have seen quite a bit of that as well.
I think it's very interesting the way of the world with the technology and the way we are now communicating. Because I'm going back thinking there's a lot of technology I wish I had when I was going through my divorce. Tell us about
Yeah.
your technology.
Thank you for asking. There are some amazing ways that people have to manage their own divorces in ways that you and I did not when we divorced even a few years ago. I know you spoke to Michael Daniels, the creator of the Fair Co-Parenting app.
Yep.
And he created that because he was having his own struggle in trying to manage a schedule with a former spouse, and they had to constantly talk about who's picking up at some summer camp and can I switch this day or that day, and every interaction that they had was an opportunity to create conflict. It gets to a point where you don't even want to talk to your former spouse at all, and everybody's stressed all the time. So he created this amazing app to help the parents just deal with schedule changes over the app and not have to engage in that conflict. So long before I met Michael Daniels, I was working with an organization that is doing the same thing, but for child support expenses and reimbursements. This is called Support Pay. You can find out more on supportpay.com. And Tommy, I do have a discount code for your clients to get 50% off for the year if they want to try it.
Wow. I'm speechless. Thank you,
I
Erika.
know. I had to go to the CEO, and then she said 30% off. And I said, "You know who I am?" She said 50. Okay. So if your clients go to the Support Pay website and they just put in the discount code podcast50, podcast50, they can get a year for half off. So
wow.
What this program does, really similar to Michael's, if your listeners heard that, is it helps parents manage the payment of all their child support and expenses without ever talking to each other about it. I don't know if you've ever had divorced friends and they're like, God, if I just never had to talk to my former spouse again about money, I would be so happy. Or
divorced friends. Oh, hold on, Erika. Yeah. Divorced friends. You're talking to me. I don't want to talk to my former spouse about money. I don't want to talk to her, period. Hello.
So many people don't. And the thing with children, people who don't have them don't know this, but man, they are so expensive. And their expenses don't come once a month like when you're running a business. It's constant. It's like swim lessons, and then it's tuition, and then they need a new uniform, and then a haircut, and then they're going on a field trip. So you're constantly racking up these expenses, and a court order usually just says split expenses. And so this means for my clients, they're usually drawing up these very elaborate spreadsheets, and they're trying to show this is how much we owe. And then they get in a fight about, well, why is it so much and where's my money going? And Support Pay just eliminates all of that by putting them in a structure that's kind of like Venmo, but super private, just the mom and the dad. And so when dad gets an expense because he takes the kids to the dentist, he just scans the receipt, the QR code, inputs all the info, sends over to mom the amount that she owes. And just like Venmo, she can kick that expense right back. And she can dispute the expense if she doesn't think that that's an appropriate expense. So it sets the disputed expense aside, and it doesn't interfere with the ongoing accounting. It's a banking system really just for child support payments and expenses. And what we love about it is it keeps people out of court because they have something to manage this discussion about money. They're not getting conflicted, and conflict is what gets people into court more than anything else. But for people who do go to court, the app pulls together all of their records in a legally admissible way. So instead of hiring your attorney and paying hundreds or thousands of dollars for them to create a spreadsheet for you and make it admissible to the judge, you right away just have the documents to hand over and your case is made right there. So what we love about it is it's designed to help parents avoid that conflict of talking about money. But if that doesn't work, it's also designed to help you get in and out of your court case with so much less out-of-pocket expense.
again, I'm sitting here going, between you, Michael Daniels, Marco Munez, who with Decomply, I really wish we had your technology, because I really believe that it's something you just said. A lot of people wouldn't even have to bother going to court, because you would have already had that information. And correct me if I'm wrong on this one, Erika, but to me, it sounds like instead of having to go to court, you would just have mediation. Less money, less stress. What do you think?
Oh, well, mediation is significantly less money and less stress. And when we have something like records that can just be produced, it's so much simpler, right? I see more and more people choosing mediation as a first option. And I see people choosing utilizing our new resources and our new apps and online divorce services like Aaron Levine's Hello Divorce or Laura Wasser's It's Over Easy, in addition to the professionals you've already brought up. People are looking more to have more of a hand in their own life and to take more control rather than to turn everything over to attorneys and judges. Whether that looks like we want to mediate because we want to make the agreements and we want everybody to win, or we want to start using some technology that helps us communicate better and helps keep us out of court. All of these things that people are doing right now are really shifting a lot of business out of the court system. And I mean, I, for one, couldn't be more thrilled with that as an outcome.
I'm going to use your own words again from Stephen Covey. It's a paradigm shift.
It's a paradigm shift. And you said earlier something about there should be more rules or there should be more laws about attorneys and ethics. But here in California, at least, the attorneys are the ones who make the laws about attorneys. So I don't believe that we are going to see major change to the family court system coming from attorneys. I think we are going to see people working outside of the system to provide other resources like support pay, like Hello Divorce. And the people are going to be more empowered to take a different path. The more people that take this path and the happier they are with the outcome, the less support the family court system will have. And eventually I see that really falling apart. There are always going to be people who need it. They need domestic violence restraining orders, or like in a situation like yours, a move away. Mm-hmm. There's no easy way to mediate a move away when you have somebody who's diehard ready to go. But I am seeing, I'm not looking at the legal world and telling them that they have to make changes. I am now in the business world and I'm in the mediation world. And instead, what we're doing is we're actually providing real ways and real alternatives for people. It's exciting.
It is exciting. You mentioned Gabrielle Hartley, past
you
guest.
Love her. I love her.
She's hilarious. Turn on the mic and just let her go is what I like to say. But between, you, Gabrielle, Michael, and Marco, and the other people you've mentioned too, I really do feel that there is the positive aspects of divorce. And I think in my view, what you all are trying to accomplish is the key thing, and that is staying out of court, because that is, that's time. It could be wasted time, wasted money, when all we have on this planet literally is time. And when we start taking time away from our kids, and then money that we have to shell out, and now you smart people, because you guys are taking the time and money, and now we can put it back into what we parents want to do: spend time and occasionally money on our kids to give them serial killer haircuts.
Whatever, yeah, Edward Scissorhands.
Yeah.
Whatever you like, as long as I'm not the one doing it.
Exactly.
Each of us that I know in what Gabrielle refers to as the positive divorce movement, and I refer to as cooperative divorce, all of us, unfortunately for our personal lives and unfortunately for my own bank account, we all feel like we have an obligation to do this work. And once these ideas have come to us and we've developed these companies, even though this isn't the first alternative to most people that are divorcing, we know that we are serving a huge group of people and a growing group of people. And if we weren't here doing what we were doing, then people would not have any alternative support. And a really cool research study we have by Robert Emery that tracked people for 12 years after they were randomly assigned to mediation versus randomly assigned to court shows us that even with these random assignments, mediation made a big and powerful difference. Children had better relationships with their parents 12 months later, and 12 years later. And the parents had better relationships with each other 12 years later. So we're talking about not just getting people out of court, which is a bad thing, but also creating these opportunities, mediation, the apps, the technology, for them to make their lives better, for it to be a more positive experience into the future. Even though this is a small group right now, it's a growing group, and I feel very honored to be a part of it, to be here talking to you about it at all. So thank you.
No, thank you. Now, why didn't you invent this 12 years ago when I was going through my divorce?
Right?
Yeah.
I know.
I have to blame somebody, Erika. I'm
know.
not going to blame me because I've gone through therapy and I'm a good person.
There's such a fascinating history to this company, and right now we're in seed round, so we're looking at generating our next round of up to $10 million for expansion of the company nationwide. But once we get through that round, I'll come back with you, Tommy, and I'll talk with you a little bit about the founder and the incredible story that she had, the challenges that she reached in her own life that created this product. But it very much like you, like Michael Daniels, like me, we're creating something because what we went through was so powerful and in so many ways so negative. We had to create something good out of it. So I'll tell you that story over a glass of wine on a future podcast.
I'm looking forward to it, and I will say, as I've said to many of the guests, you have an open invite anytime, Erika, anytime.
Well, I am a middle child of a very large family, and so anyone who's willing to listen to me talk is a friend to me.
Aw, I'm an only child, and I talk to myself a lot.
Before you let me go, I do just want to take a minute to tell you that I appreciate very much what you're doing in the promotion of positive fatherhood out in the world, and want you to know that there are so many women and so many mothers, myself included, that are on board and would love to know more about how, as mothers and as women, we can support that movement to bring fathers more into the household, to let them do the haircuts, to lower the gatekeeping. So if you've got anything on that I can share, I would love to. I think these two groups can work together to create a lot more change. And we move farther and farther away from Mrs. Doubtfire and more into a world where a parent has the opportunity to be a caretaker, a bath giver, a breadwinner, all of those things at once. I love what you're doing and really can't wait to see more of that.
Oh, thank you, Erika. The only thing I would say is, as dads, it's okay to tell us, hey, the yard looks great, or thanks for putting gas in the car, or thanks for walking the dog. That's great and all. But what we really want to hear more of is, even from our former spouses, we really do want to hear that we're good dads. We're great dads. We're there for our kids. We're not the so-called, we went out for a pack of smokes and didn't come back. We support our kids. And I just had a good friend of mine on this podcast, Scott Moreau, who is one of my heroes when it comes to not just positive fatherhood, but positive blended family. And, I look at my dad friends. We want to hear that we're good dads, not that, hey, thanks for mowing the yard today. Thanks for vacuuming. That's great and all. That doesn't do anything for me as a parent, really. And it's not, I hope it's not like, having our ego stroked, Erika. It's, women are different, obviously, that you ladies will get together for a glass of wine and you'll talk in a positive way, saying, that dress looks great on you. I like your shoes. I like your hair. You're not going to get that from guys. What you're going to get from guys is, hey, your yard looks great. Hey, tell me how, what kind of car you're looking at. I think it comes from women. We need the women to say to us to start that conversation. And so as men, then we can turn it around and say to another guy, I think you're doing a great job as a dad. You're doing a great job as a husband. And if we can get that support from women, there will be more positive men out there knowing that they're doing their best and that they are really good, great dads. For example, John Francis, who started the Father's Eve movement, where he says that it's about getting together with your buddies. And a lot of the guys I've talked to have been part of this Father's Eve movement. They talk about how positive it is and that they can share feelings and they can say to one another, how can I help you? If you're hurting, how can I help you as a brother? But it starts from the women, Erika. It starts from moms saying, to their husbands, to their former husbands, I think you're doing a great job as a dad.
I love that because it's free and it's simple. And there are so many, there's just so much advice out there in the world about how to have a better marriage or a better co-parenting relationship. And advice that is free and simple is the very best kind. I think I'm hearing from you that what would really resonate with dads is if we just see them and we affirm and validate a little task that they did. I heard you reading that book to our daughter and I saw how happy she was and you did a great job. Or we send a thank you for something that they did. Maybe know that they're going to do things differently than we're going to do them. But like I was talking about earlier, they still did it. So thank them for doing it. And I think you're saying the more that we're able to build up the men in our lives, our husbands, our co-parents, then the more that you are able to be there for each other, the stronger you become when you have a fellow co-parent or friend that's not getting the affirmation or the validation that we need. So that's a little thing that a woman can do that really can create an impact that will spread. And I think it's a beautiful idea. We have Father's Day coming up, which is the one time of year that some people thank fathers. And this inspires me, Tommy, to write a piece about how we can have Father's Day every single day of the year, just by creating a simple way to recognize and thank the men in our lives for the things that they do.
Thank you. And it's like, I know you and I have been emailing back and forth, and I'm very grateful that you're the one person who's watched my TEDx talk more than once. That all I wanted to get out of that message was, as dads, yeah, we know we're late occasionally. What impact is that making on our kids' lives? It's nothing. And, one of the things that used to drive me nuts was Sundays when I would drop my son off with his mom at the standard neutral location, and I would get 10 minutes down the road and already my phone is getting emails from her letting me know how badly I screwed up that weekend. I screwed up his homework, or I forgot to pack something, or it's one of those situations where you then sit there and going, I'm a bad dad. That's all I am. I'm a bad dad. And as somebody who's battled depression for many, many years, when you hear that over and over again, then it starts resonating. Oh my gosh, I'm a bad dad. I was a bad husband. I was a bad child. I mean, it goes down the road.
Sure.
But if we can take that piece out, Erika, and reverse engineer it and just say, thank you for, like you were saying, thank you for, helping with the homework. Thank you for making sure, most of the stuff was packed in his backpack. I think that's what co-parenting is all about, is taking out the emotions as far as you did this versus thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. It's this shift from feeling that each of us do it better than the other. And there's all kinds of problems. And as soon as we look at the other person, we see all of those problems, and it's evident that we're perfect and they're a disaster. Right. And
Exactly.
again, very often that dynamic comes out of court, because that acrimonious trench that you dig for yourself the minute that you go into the courthouse becomes deeper and deeper and deeper. And it's incredibly hard to see over that trench, see the good things that the person is doing. But it's so simple, isn't it, to say something nice. And if this is the first time that you say something nice to your former spouse, you might get a response that is sarcastic or disbelieving, or what do you want, or are you trying to manipulate me? So to any of the moms who are listening, or the dads who are listening, and they want to take this opportunity to pick up their phone and shoot a quick text to their spouse and say, hey, thanks for doing the haircuts last week. They look great. And your spouse writes back and says, what do you want? Or where is this coming from? Or why are you doing this? Because that happens in a high conflict relationship. Just keep doing it. And eventually your spouse is going to start to believe the things that you say about them, whether you're saying a lot of good things or a lot of bad things, right? They'll begin to internalize the good. I just did it while we were on this call. I texted my former husband and told him, thank you for the haircuts yesterday. He had kind of screwed up the schedule, and I got mad that he screwed up the schedule, and he said, I'm sorry. And I said, it's okay. It's fine. And I was looking at that text exchange, and what I didn't say was, it's okay, it's fine, but thank you for taking them and getting it done, and they look great. So while we were on this call, I have sent him a text. You can't do that on your Familyversary. Well, you can't do it at all.
Exactly. And I want to get you to your Familyversary. Before I let you go, supportpay.com, 50% off. Podcast 50 is the discount code. Erika, thank you, your CEO, for doing that. That is super cool. Last question, though, Erika. Last question, and that is, Erika, what has changed in your life in the past 12 months?
Oh, wow. Well, I'll try to be quick, but it's a very personal answer. You said you have dealt with depression in the past, as have I. Had postpartum depression twice. And last year I contracted significant treatment-resistant depression. That's the kind of depression that's so bad that you have to cycle through all kinds of medications to try to figure out which one works. And so I didn't work for months last year. I went through a tremendous amount of pain and challenges and sadness and difficulty, and I almost lost my business. And then I got through it and stabilized and got back on track, and sort of started reclimbing the hill and rebuilding my business. And as soon as I got my business stabilized, COVID happened. And so it has destroyed the business overnight, essentially, because like I told you, we don't have cooperative people that are divorcing right now. So what is so exciting about this is that it comes in at the same time that I have the opportunity to work with Support Pay, that I have the opportunity to launch my own software, Divorceably. You and I can talk about that in the future. And just this week, my children and I launched an organization to help children promote peace. It's ipromotepeace.com. And we're using the events happening in the world today as a prompt to help parents give their children ways to engage in peaceful action. So in the past 12 months, it's maybe, Tommy, been the biggest roller coaster of my life, from doing very well to getting quite sick, to building myself back up, to having everything disappear overnight. But over the edge of that cliff, there were more opportunities. And the next 12 months of my life are just going to be tons of fun to watch all these opportunities expand.
I want to make sure I have this written down correctly. Is
Yeah.
it isupportpeace.com? Like the letter I?
The letter I, promote peace.
I promote peace. Okay.
Yeah, .com. The children and I started that just a few days ago. So there's not too much on the site, but we work on it every day. And they are learning that when there's difficult things happening in the world, that there are things that they can do. Little things, big things. Essentially, that even if you're a child, there's something that you can do to create some peace in this world. And so far, we have made $16 for our charity. So they feel like they are wildly successful.
That is successful. Yeah. Good for them. Good for you.
Thank you. And my business is Divorceably. It's a Divorceably, divorceably.com. And that is my current practice, the mediation that we're taking into software that will be the nation's first software designed exclusively for couples who are divorcing together. But that's another podcast.
That is another podcast.
The last 12 months there's been so much growth and change and opportunity at a time when I was telling the universe, like, I don't need any more growth. Thank you so much for the offer. I've had enough growth and change. And the universe was like, no, I don't think you have. So I'm actually really excited for the next 12 months. And I love to see, the more I work in the field of cooperative divorce, the more people I meet like you who are out there doing incredible things for people every day out of their own experience. It's been a joy for me, and it's really, really lovely to meet you and to be a guest on your show.
Like I said, Erika, you have an open invite anytime. Erika Englund, I don't know where to start. Supportpay.com, I can't even speak. Divorceably.com. Grab my other notes. ipromotepeace.com. Oh my gosh. Your new coffee mug runneth over.
Yeah, I know. And I do think it's fair, now that it's 5 o'clock in California, to fill that new coffee mug up with a nice cold beer.
I'm going to go bust out the wine. And I hope, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have my wife and I tonight. We're going to toast you and your family for your Familyversary tonight. And I'm going to send you a picture of that.
I would be delighted. We would be thrilled for you to celebrate with us. We have worked really hard to become the family that we are today, and I'm proud of us. So thank you for that.
Wait, before you go, please, one more time, give a shout out to our sponsor. This episode was brought to you by Pod Hero, the easiest way to support your favorite podcast. Did you know that only 1% of the biggest podcasts make money? I'm not even in the 2.15. I don't even like milk. That's a little milk joke. But it's true. The other 99% rely on support from listeners like you. With Pod Hero, you can support all of your favorite podcasts, and hopefully I am one of them, at a low monthly fee of only $4.99 a month membership. Just click on the link in the show notes for this episode tell Pod Hero your favorite podcast. Again, Blending the Family. That's what you just listened to. Please, please make sure I'm your favorite. Okay? Your contribution gets shared between shows at the end of the month. Pod Hero works with almost all podcasts. There's a 0% platform fee. They don't take a cut. There are no contracts. And you not only get a 30-day free trial, you get my undying, devoted love for the rest of your life. Pod Hero. Thanks for listening.